And with that, welcome to another week on the Saturday Night Synthesis. I'm your host, Alex. And I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, because that was pretty amazing. We got a good show for you tonight, got a good audience tonight. Just to check in on a couple things. If you have any questions about what kind of gear made that amazing song, any kind of patches Frederick might have used, put them in the comments and we will answer those questions. Also, while you're there, I'm talking to you. Well, and I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to both of you and you. Click on that like and subscribe button right now. Your hand's on the mouse or you're hovering over your touchpad. It doesn't make any difference to you, but it makes a difference to us. Is that a grim indictment of my life? A little bit. But do it anyway. That's what I would ask. But enough of my rambling. I would like to give you to the man, the myth, the legend, the founder of the feast, Frederick Foxtrott. Frederick, how are you doing?
I am great. First of all, that was really fun to do. It was a lot more fun than I expected. I think at the beginning of Saturday Night Synthesis, when we started doing the shows, like recording them, I think right at the beginning, I was just coming off doing some yard work where I got a poison ivy, and I just realized that today is back to yard work day, so I'm a little sore because I was back out in that side yard putting in a patio. So yeah, it's
seasons are changing. Nature is healing.
That's right. And then
I'm going to get more poison ivy. It's great. Frederick, what were you doing on that song? What were you doing there? I really like why the guitar? What inspired you to do that whole guitar part on that song?
Oh yeah, so I was coming across this band that was playing at this venue called Acheron, the Acheron, which is connected to this bar called the Anchor Inn in right off Bushwick area in between Bushwick and Williamsburg in Brooklyn. And it's one of those venues that, it has, it's just all painted black in a stage, and there's some guy, at least in the beginning, that was just selling beer out of a cooler, and like had like a bottle of Jameson in there too, that would pour like little shots in those plastic glasses, and then people would just get like murder each other in hardcore shows. And so I was on the YouTubes, and my buddy sent me over a kind of a show from that venue, and I was like, man, that's so awesome. It's a band called Uniform, and it's one guy does the vocals, and then another guy plays guitar, and he has a Eurorack modular set that he just kind of makes noise with and has fun at like a really incredible BPM. So I was just like, that would be something. I mean, I didn't even though that was like the kind of I guess impetus for why I did the song, I didn't even get, that definitely wasn't hardcore, but it definitely has like, I have too much melodic stuff to ever really go into that territory. But I definitely wanted to see what I could do with like a really hard-hitting, high BPM kind of track. So, yeah.
Well, how'd you get that effect on the guitar? Did you use? I know you got the microcosm for the guitar a little bit ago. Did you use that, or did you use one of your pedals?
No, I did not use the microcosm. I was actually trying to work it in, but the microcosm has too many flourishes and kind of details that would get lost in the...
It's not hardcore enough?
Well, it get lost in the noise, and then in fact what it might do is it would muddy up the clarity of whatever I was playing. I didn't use that, but what I did use was just a home fuzz box that I built, like soldered together, and then I used a Death by Audio robot, which is like this incredible, extremely loud. The volume is on 1 on the pedal. It's meant to just be completely cranked and like an open stage and just be able to fill the whole place. And I think that it's probably not even very safe for electronics to play things through. So Death by Audio is a effects pedal company, and it also was another venue in Williamsburg that you used to be able to go to. It was one of those places, it was just a black room with a stage and you could smoke cigarettes, and it was just one of those places that didn't give a fuck and had like 2 people taking in $5 in a till that you had no idea where that was going. Obviously to the bands, but you're just someone's, like they could have a free night and someone could just be there like asking for money, and I'd bring up $5 and I'd always arrive like really late. Anyways, yeah, so that's the Death by Audio. It's in one of their first kind of real good. I mean, it's not the most useful pedal unless you just want to kind of deafen people. That's really the only thing it does. It doesn't do anything else. I wouldn't really call it even a fuzz box or distortion. It's just pretty much But
well, all right. Yeah, they got me where I needed to be. They got my energy up, got me excited. The comments, everyone says that they really like the song. Do you have anything else, Frederick, you want to say about that song, how it came together? Or
the performance I played for you was the first time that it actually came together. So you actually heard the first version of the song. Every other time I've gone through it all day, I've gotten pieces of it, but then kind of putting them together was what was not working. And I think there were some really good transitions there, so I'm really pretty happy about it.
Oh no, it was good. It was a real classic. Reminded me of the early days of the show when you're like, oh my god, this song's not coming together, and then we're like, okay, and then you start and we're all like, oh, and our faces melt off.
Okay.
So that's it was everyone's feeling nostalgic. Nostalgic for, I don't know, not a winter of interminable sadness.
Yeah, I did feel that today, right? I felt today I had the window open, everything was coming in. Today was like the first day where I really felt the spring was here. So,
well, how about you guys out there in the audience land? Do you guys have any questions about that song, or want to talk about your spring awakenings?
You all sell T-shirts?
Jamie likes it.
Yeah, I was wondering what I was particularly curious about how you were timing the intro, because it seemed like a little bit difficult to pull off. Were you timing a lead in, like a measure,
yeah, were you trying to strum to the right beats per minute? Is that what that?
If you not practice, but like if you do it enough times I started playing that at like 4 o'clock this afternoon. So it's just like trying to get that was like one of the first things. I could have just gone in with the beat, but I kind of liked just having the guitar by itself and then having it come in, right? But yeah, no, it is tough. Although, I mean, the human ear isn't going to be the best. I mean, if you're musical, which I know that you are, Jamie, if you're musical, you can detect. But most people, as long as I latch on as soon as it comes on, going like 5 like beats per minute isn't going to be, as long as I smack on it right away, then the human ear really isn't going to detect that difference. But I think I really got it on the beat. So
you did, and it's like one of those. It's like a backup band would always be able to adjust. You can't have your equipment adjust behind you.
Yeah.
And retime to what you're strumming.
Right.
So it's a. I wonder, are there other examples of people of that sort of relationship happening where you have to really trust that your timing is right?
So Frederick, how's that search going for equipment for your new rack?
Well, so I mentioned the other day that I had some birthday money and I saved for a year, and we got some stimulus money, and I was like, got my stimmies. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna buy. So I have like another one of these 3 tiers, 60 HP. I'm gonna go through, actually. I think today what the conversation is gonna kind of come around to is just, I'm gonna show you what I bought, and then I want to kind of just explain a little bit. Obviously, I won't be able to go into too much detail, but I think in some ways this will kind of describe how a person goes about putting together a case, a rack. All the little kinds of things that you're going to need to have. Because it's not, every module isn't self-contained. Every module needs another module in order to sound its best. It's very rare that you'll have a module that is just the thing that, that just sounds perfect. There's a lot of companies out there, I guess, relative to, it's not a whole lot, but there's plenty of variety for you to choose from. And so it's really one of those experiences where you're just like, oh, I'm going to get that. I think anybody who has a hobby or anybody who has I wouldn't even call it a hobby, like a passion of like,
compulsion.
But like, some people, are into different shit. But it was just buying it and assembling it and just anticipating it is going to be great. So they should be rolling in any time in the next couple of days. They should start arriving. And then what's really funny is that I'm having trouble locating a power supply unit that will fit within the Eurorack case that I have. The Moog Eurorack cases are kind of small and cozy, so they don't have a lot of room for the power supply. Underneath this right here basically is just it doesn't look like this at all, but certainly for metaphor, it helps. If you can imagine a power strip for you have it at your house, so you plug in the wall, a power strip. It's exactly like that. It's a power strip, and each one of these modules has a plug that goes into that power strip. And so you have to fit that power strip in behind all the modules, which come down pretty close to the back of the skiff. So I'm having trouble locating one. And in the end, I can just build one, which would be fine. But it would be nice just to have one that I could just get. But it might turn out that I receive all the modules and I won't be able to play them for like a couple weeks, and I'll just have to sit there and look at them because I might
don't have anything to plug them into.
I have nothing to plug them into, exactly. So,
well, it makes me think of, I think, when the arson investigators come when you set fire in your rental. They're going to be like, oh, was there a lot of electricity going through that room? And they're going to like subpoena YouTube for these episodes of the Saturday Night Synthesis.
Yeah.
I think there will be evidence in the lawsuit. Also, they make it so easy for you to like buy the racks with that. Can you show us the schematic of the thing you're going to buy?
Yeah, for sure.
Because it made me think of, we talk about the music you played, and you would sometimes be like, there's like sounds you can't make. There's like kinds of electronic music and kinds of synthesizer music that you can't make because you just don't have mods that make those noises and they don't work together in that kind of way.
Right.
And so I'm really interested when you were like, I'm doubling, not getting like some new mods, but like I'm doubling the amount of like a whole nother rack. It really got me thinking like what new kind of like sounds you'd make on this new equipment, and like how it would change your music and how it kind of change the sounds you could make. So I think that'd be fun. I'd love to hear about that too. Kind of look at it, and you can kind of talk about, not specifically, let's not use up that content of specifically what those mods do, but just like what the different parts do. And I'd love to hear about that, because I'm really looking forward to like, not that I'm really looking forward to how your music's going to change and grow, and it's pretty exciting.
Let's say if I double this, right? So literally it's double the amount of modules. It doesn't double the possibilities. It like 10 times the possibilities, because it's almost exponential in the way that the different modules can then work with one another. So that's what's really exciting about it, is it's not just, it's not like I'm not like just doubling the various things I can explore. It's like truly
because each module on that rack can interact with every single other module on that rack
and produce new things. Exactly. So that is something to keep in mind as I kind of explain. But should I just bring that up?
Do it.
All right. So first thing you'll notice on the bottom of this is called ModularGrid.net. And if anybody out there who is a new Eurorack player or a synthesizer player, or if you play guitar and you have a great guitar pedal collection, this site is indispensable. You basically just go in there and you create your rack, and then it tells you, I'm not going to be able to bring it up now, but it will tell you all the amplitudes. Like, so for instance, in this new rack, I have something like 800 plus 12 volts are being drawn, and 355 minus 12 volts are being drawn, and 5 volts. So basically every Eurorack has 3 voltage sources, plus 12, minus 12, and 5. and that it draws from, so that power strip behind distributes that power evenly. And so every module might have, 30 plus 12 and 5 minus 12. It might draw that amount. And so the power of your power supply has to be enough and sufficient to supply enough current to all these beautiful creatures.
Okay, so which one is the one you have now? And which one is the one that you're getting?
Thank you. So the one on the right is what I have now, and that is, I call that Elliot, and then the new one on the left is Ella. Is like I have gave him names. It's what I did. So as you can see, you have the morphogene over here. The phonogene right here. You have clouds here. You have the warps, the Stoicheia, the dope for div, what basically allows me to divide it into different octaves, and then the circumvent VCO, these, and then of course the mother 32. So that's what I have on the right, and then on the left, real quick, just let me follow up. Just let me close it off on ModularGrid. Is that for those of you who are new to synthesis, go there immediately and just begin, or even if you want to kind of get into it and maybe start looking at some forums and ask questions, that's a great place to begin. And everyone uses it. Everyone from the largest to the smallest. It's just really great to have these kind of schematics ready at hand. So to get along to the new rack over here, you'll notice that there is a mother 32 looking panel down here at the bottom. And this is what is called a DFAM, or a drummer from another mother, which is a semi-modular unit, just like the mother 32, but it is a drum machine that is all analog, that it can be used as a sequencer as well. It doesn't have to do, because you're literally shaping the sound, you're taking white noise to make the snare, and you're making a high attack, very fast decay to do like a closed hi-hat. You have all these different ways of shaping the sound into drum sounds, but you can also use it just to create tones as a sequencer. But it has 2 oscillators, maybe 3 actually. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't played around with it too much, but I've watched a lot of people use it. And I think that eventually what I'll end up doing is maybe in the next economic downturn with stimulus money, I will buy the third one, the subharmonicon. So there's basically 3 flagship semi-modular units that Moog has. There's the mother 32, the DFAM, and then the subharmonicon, which is another kind of synthesizer, something maybe more akin to the mother 32, but has a whole lot of different range of sounds it can produce. And I think it would just be fantastic to have 3 cases, each one with a base of the flagship semi-modular unit, and then have the 120, because each one is 60 HP. And HP is, when I say HP, that's merely a measurement of length. This module here is 12 HP. This module here is 18 HP. This module here is 4 HP, and so on, or 6 HP. So that's how much you use to kind of figure out how much you're gonna space you're gonna be taking up. This is a 3U. This is the 3U is the distance from here to the top. So that's the general setup of how to read this, so to speak, how to make this readable.
Well, I was really interesting looking at this because I know you talked when Hex 7 was on the show. You talked a lot about like design, like how interesting like the modular synthesis is in terms of design, and like not having such a good view of what the modules look like is really interesting for me because I can really appreciate what you're talking about, the design. And immediately my eye goes to the top left of the new one where you have those modules that are those mutable instruments ones that look just like the warps and the clouds, which I really like, which we've talked about in previous episodes. Do those ones like make the same kind of noises, or is just they're just designed to look the same? Do they kind of operate the same? How does that? Are they going to interact in a different way, or why'd you pick those ones?
Yeah, I'll go through and talk about maybe the individual modules, and I'll start with those first. But first, I want to more comment on the look, right? And when we were talking with Hex 7, we were talking about both functionality and aesthetics, and the combination of those two things. So if you can imagine, if I'm a person who buys a module and I get to use it very, I get really good at using it, and it's a module that makes sense to me. The flow of, okay, I plug in here. These are the knobs that are the important ones. These are the less important knobs. It's just some people kind of click with different setups of modules. One of the best things about Mutable Instruments is that it has this kind of aesthetic, which very much you can even see like you can see the flow of the frequency down to, this is the CV patch point that will then, I can use an LFO, for instance, to then turn, I talked about how I only have two hands and sometimes I want to modulate or turn things, but I'm unable to, so you automate that. And so you automate that with a LFO, a very slow moving or fast moving oscillator that you can then patch into these little patch points that will then be able to change these knobs. Now, you don't just have to use an LFO, you can use a very specific voltage, so you can actually go, it doesn't have to be a slew or a transition from let's say on this frequency from, let's say, here all the way around. You can use CV to very specifically go from here to here immediately. You don't have to, just to be very clear, but oftentimes that sense of subtle movements is used with LFOs. So I just want to kind of touch on the idea of aesthetics and how important they are for getting people to be able to learn and understand a certain brand or a certain design sensibility in these modules. So what I have here, I'll start with the Mutable Instruments. So these, again, you're right, Alex, are the same companies that made clouds and warps. Over here you have rings, and this is as somewhat of an oscillator. It makes these really incredible. You can make like bells, and these, by the way, these are all digital synthesizers. But you can like from bells to like almost like a bamboo kind of percussive sound to almost like woodwinds or strings. There's just such an amazing amount of different kinds of sounds you can be. I'm not sure, but I believe you can do like chords and stuff. Like you can actually have amazing chords. I'm really excited to get that. It's a really classic Mutable Instruments module, and a lot of people have it. In fact, I was just watching a show today early on, and someone was commenting on in the chat like, "Oh my gosh, that's the rings! What a great like nostalgic classic sound." So the next one to the right is Plots. It's Mutable Instruments Plots, and that is more percussive. It's not exactly a drum module, although I think it's been described that way. There's other kinds of sounds you can make with it, but it is also a kind of oscillator, but it's more in the percussive kind of. I guess it has like 16 different voices. So each one of these, left and right, the red over here, and then the green over here. Each one of these, I believe, are different voices, which you can then, to an infinitely small detail, modulate or change or kind of dial in the sound that you want. Over here, you have Tides, and Tides is a really interesting, it's kind of like, it's an interesting kind of what's called a ADSR, which stands for Attack, Decay, Sustain, and Release. And this is what's called an envelope generator. I've talked about it before, where you have something that if it goes from quiet to the immediate to very loud, very fast, that's the attack level. If you have a low attack level, then it kind of gradually comes up. If you have a fast attack level, it hits immediately. And that's really where you have that kind of percussive sound, because it's pop, pop, pop. That the sound of it bursting out up to its volume is what gives it that percussive sound. Then it holds up at its peak. It'll hold, and that's called sustain. And then as it's released, it's the kind of how fast it's released. And then there's also decay, which is the slope. It's release and decay have something in common. They're both having to deal with how it goes back down to a non-signal, but they are a little different. So it does that, and it also is an LFO. So and it has these various very unique characteristics. So it's not like any ADSR. It's not like any low frequency oscillator. You can do chords with this one as well. You can do amazing chords with this one because you can get the LFO to go at audio rate. The LFO is moving so fast that it's having that sound and it creates an oscillator. And then you can actually split them up into 4 different tones and then make a chord out of that. And then you can modulate that. So it's really amazing.
So you said the magic word, which was LFO. I know how much you love low-frequency oscillators. How many low-frequency oscillators you got in that bad boy?
You know what? I have the one on the Tides, but I have plenty of low-frequency oscillators on my other rack, so I'm not too concerned. But I did get this, what's called the Øchd. It's OCHD. It's by, I forget the name of the actual manufacturer, but it's designed by a YouTuber by the name of DivKid, who's probably single-handedly responsible for most people's sickness. He is a person who gets a module and he demonstrates them, and I think he's out of England. He's just an incredible DivKid, DivKid, and I would seriously suggest if you're not watching that, then you should be watching that immediately if you are into synthesizers. But he has these, because he reviews so many modules, he comes up with these ideas where he's like, we need to have this sound or whatever. And so what he did is he designed an LFO that this one pulses in and out. This one pulses in and out like half rate, half of that, half of that, half of that. So there are 8 LFOs that are all locked in a almost braid. With as you go down, it goes slower. So if you can imagine, I would really suggest if you want to kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about. DivKid obviously has a demo of it, and it's just really beautiful. So you could, for instance, take this Øchd and use it to modulate every single one of these rings. Oftentimes, when you have low frequency oscillators, you have to do all this patching if you want to kind of get them to be in sync with one another. Well, this doesn't. I don't need it. It's almost. This is how I kind of describe it. It's almost as though that Øchd as a module is simply a patch that you could do with like 8 LFOs. It's a complicated patch that is just hardwired as like pure function. Like it's just a purely functioning LFO with 7 other versions of itself at various rates. They'll always be in step with one another, which is really great because then it's very musical. There's nothing jarring. There's nothing that kind of falls out of step, So you could use this, but even more importantly, you can use it to modulate all these amazing patch points, because this is right here. It's called the Make Noise Mimeophone. I know that last episode I talked about how I wasn't really interested in getting another kind of clouds or the beads which succeeded the clouds, or let's say the morphogene which succeeded the phonogene. But this actually is the phonogene's grandchild. I can take these LFOs and put in, let's say, a sound of a cat meowing, and then like sample that, put it through the mimeophone, and then have all those LFOs doing that cutting. I talked about how you cut and you smear, and you with the granular synthesis, you can have all that cutting and smearing and all those little delays and clips all be done at once by the Øchd, and then have everything be completely gelled together. So anyways, that's just, the mimeophone is going to be an incredible one. Maybe I should pause here to see if there's any questions or if you have anything to say, Alec.
I don't know about that. Well, Jamie actually had a question, and it's related to something I was thinking too, where I was really thinking about the design for the Mimeophone, right? Like I was like, okay, Frederick's got other ones from that same manufacturer because it has that same kind of style as the Wogglebug, all these other Make Noise ones.
Yeah, the Wogglebug.
And and Jamie had an interesting point too, where he says that because Jamie's a computer programmer, that you're talking about design and layouts, that he's talking about when they do front end design libraries and like HTML and CSS, that it's got a similar aesthetic and a similar kind of like the layouts of the modules and how they all have the different designs. I thought that was just really fascinating. I'd never think about design in terms of like computer programming. I don't think a lot about design, but I'm not kind of in this world of electronics, and it just is so much more aesthetics than you think it would be. I thought it was pretty interesting.
This is the new Make Noise aesthetic. You'll see like the original ones. You'll see like Maths, and this is actually the second generation faceplate for Maths. And then this is, I think, one of the older faceplates for Phonogene. And then when I think they put out a black faceplate with gold. And I think it was just so popular that they just, this is just I'm guessing here, but like everyone just, the black with gold or yellow and white knobs, everyone just bought. And I also don't really know too much about that world, but I think about it we talked for a little while about West Coast and East Coast, and how the Buchla or West Coast sound was about creating new sounds versus synthesizing ones we already know. And I definitely would put this more in the so-called West, even though I don't think they're perfect categories. I would put this more in that West Coast kind of design. And this is, I think, reflected in the aesthetic as well, because you're seeing almost very almost like a dry erase board with manic arrows and zigzags that are put up on there to kind of describe a concept. So this is perhaps, I would say, one of the most, I don't know, I just think it's beautiful, but yeah.
Well, I've been informed that I in fact did a piss poor job of asking Jamie's question for him. So Jamie, what was it you were trying to get at there?
I think that the styling of the individual modules and the font and that sort of work is a whole other case study in like analyzing. What I was actually referencing was when Mr. Foxtrott was going over the layout of those measurements of how the width of the board is split up into, he said 4. What were the units of measurement that you had said? H?
So the height is called U, so this is like a 3U, and then the width is HP.
HP. So in certain front end libraries like Bootstrap or Material Design Lite and these other like things, these tools that people use, there's this concept of splitting your viewport of your like what you see on your browser into 12 columns, and there's a whole giant like every website practically that you could go to uses some sort of column based system to align divs in a web page. And I thought it was very akin to the row column pattern that is used in those all the time. So I was wondering if there was standard widths, like you said, but are there any modules that are like, you mentioned one was like 5U or 5 HP.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that's like 6 and then you can't fit it?
Right.
Then you can't clear the board or you can't fill the rest of the board?
So, I mean, the smallness has to do a lot, obviously, with the engineering design, with how the components, right? But there are standards. So, I think 12 HP is, on modular grids, one of the great features is that when you hover over each module, a bubble pops up with all of its specs. So there very much are mostly even. Okay, so like 10, 12, 6, 8, and 4 are very common. There is some 3, this is a 3 right here. And so because I had a 3 here, I had a 3 here left over, so I had
Got
to
it.
so I had to get another 3 for 6. And there perhaps are other modules that are odd numbers. Now, just recently, there's a company called 2HP that, not to surprise you, makes 2HP modules, and they are becoming very popular. I think in some ways it's like if you can get your components and do a really good job of doing a versatile module at 2 HP, if you can do it the first, it's just such a, because they're usually like less expensive. These Pico DSP and the VCO, that's going to run you probably $115 or something like that, 150 maybe. Instead of the more expensive ones, and it's going to fill those gaps that you have. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah,
it did actually. It actually, when you said the 2 HP thing, I'm like, oh yeah, right, because like the smaller the componentry you can get within each of these, the more you could obviously fit. And so one thing I was wondering is like, will a modular designer they're at a 3, right? Will they raise it to a 4 to be more standard? And the width, will they expand the body of the module?
Yeah, I would. In this, I don't know a lot. Here's what I'm gonna. This is a guess. There's no one who starts off and then says, "Oh, I want to make this 4," because it's 3. It's they start off at 4 and they want to say, "How can we get it down to 3?" Rack space is a premium, right? So you want to make, this is what Eurorack is all about, and this is what most people who play the 5U units, something like Hex 7s, which is much bigger. One of the things he was saying was that that turning the knobs on Eurorack is very finicky, because with a larger unit, that pot, you can do a pretty substantial turn and have a very smooth kind of modulation. Whereas if you would turn the same amount on the pots on these things, it would make a very drastic change. So it's really important with these smaller components that you have to turn small. The smaller the pot or the knob, the more sensitive it is to changes. So this is so obviously there's a lot of drawbacks to having this, whenever I'm trying to tune this VCO, for instance, you move it a millimeter rather, and all of a sudden you're in a different octave,
Sure.
So.
Very clear. Thank you. I get what you're pointing at.
Gotcha.
Totally.
So just to finish some of this stuff over here, I have an effects unit right here called Milky Way by Endorphins. It's an amazing module design company, and you can do ducking or what's called sidechain compression. So what I can do is I can make it so that I have, when a drum kicks, right, when that kick hits, the frequency spectrum in which that kick exists disappears from the oscillator or whatever else that is. So it has this kind of like pulsating sound, which is the volume coming through. Every time it kicks, it just kind of has that pulsing feeling. Anybody who listens to synthwave definitely has heard that sound before. It's a very popular sound. I'm actually not a huge fan of.
You were saying, so what is something that this, like your new rack has that your other one doesn't have? Is there something like that's like new, that's like really different?
So one thing that's kind of leading into the next section. Well, most of the modules I obviously have done so far, I don't have those kinds of things, but one of the things that Elliot over here is lacking is filters. The only real filter I have is this right here, this set from the Mother 32. And then I can kind of filter out or do some kind of filtration using my other modules. So what I've done here is I've really got a good range of filters. And the filter is that sound. Maybe I'll just play it real quick so everyone knows what a filter is.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Yeah. So that's just the oscillator playing. It's not just turning it up. So there's volume, right? Where you turn it. That's volume. What I'm doing here is I'm literally cutting out all the low frequencies, all the high frequencies down to low frequencies. So now I'm adding them in one by one, hertz by hertz. I'm adding in another frequency. And then that's the low end, and then I have the higher end resonance up here where I can that's a filter. I'm playing with the spectrum of sound that's able to pass through the filter. And that's a really classic.
Scanners. Hello.
Yeah, I mean filters are the classic sound of what a synthesizer. When people think synthesizers, it's the filter they're usually talking about. Now what I have here is the wasp filter. It's a dope for wasp filter, which is it's gorgeous. I love the look of it. It's just a super classic filter. It has your frequency cutoff. That's your lower end, and then it also has resonance as well. And it has a really unique character or quality to it. I think it's based off of a filter that was found on an old synthesizer that it didn't have keys. It had copper touch plates that you would put on, and then when you would play and sweat during a show, it would just all of a sudden start firing off sounds because the connectivity of the salt in your sweat. I think so much of a lot of synthesizers actually copied that. And anyways, so I have that. This is a model off of that filter, and then up next over there's the Filtrate or Filter 8. I don't know what this does. All I know is I watched a couple videos on it, and it's a filter that just does everything. It sounds so unique, and there's so much ability to every nuance and detail be able to dial in the kind of filter you want. So I'm really, really excited about this. So the filter was really what kind of getting at what you were talking about, Alex, about something that I really didn't have. There's actually another thing that I don't have a lot of. One thing that I actually use a lot for, I use the maths a lot for, is an envelope generator. I already talked a little bit how Tides is somewhat of an envelope generator. It's not a very straightforward one, but it is a envelope generator. So I got right here, this is a dope for dual ADSR. Again, attack, decay, sustain, and release. So I have two envelope generators, so I can control how quick it goes to volume, how fast it decays, sustains, and releases. And then here's a really great CV patch points to modulate that or control that from another source. Second to lastly, I have here the AI synthesis quad VCA, and again, a VCA is volume, but there's so much more you can do than just volume or attenuate. You can put other modulation sources in there and then modulate the modulation. You know what I'm saying? You can put in. There's a saying in synthesis that you can never have too many VCAs, because with a VCA it's basically a way station in which you can transform one modulation source with another modulation source. You start getting into unexpected places very, very quickly when you do that. And so lastly, you have the scales, and this is just something I wanted a very simple sequencer. This right here has 32 save slots. It also has, if I'm playing in G, let's say I'm just playing in G, I'm just jamming, right? I'm jamming in G, and I want to have something come up. I can just hit G, and all of a sudden a kind of random melody will just start coming and start playing. And so and then if I don't like a note, I can take a note out. Or if I like a note that's not there, I can add that note in on the fly without having to actually sequence something and without put the thought into it. If you're just jamming and all of a sudden you think to yourself, it'd be really great if there's a little melody, because a lot of these melodies were just like three note melodies, da 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 da, right? So it just is so great to have something on the fly that you can just push a button and then it will add to your. And obviously you'd run a oscillator through this.
Well, gentlemen, anyone else in the audience have anything else to say? I think that's going to be it for tonight. I think we got everything. Frederick, you have anything else you want to say besides where are my modules? Why haven't they shown up in the mail yet?
There is just such a huge groundswell of community that's going on right now, and I would really suggest that people. I feel like I'm like proselytizing for a cult here, but really just go to Earth Modular Society or go to. There's New York Modular Society, there's an LA Modular Society, there's a Colorado Modular Society. There's all these different societies, and there are local communities that you're able to get to know the people who are making music in your scene, because you may be by yourself in your cabin in the woods making your music and not know that there's somebody an hour away who's also doing it, and because this is a very niche kind of interest, but it really just blows all that away when you begin to understand how many other people are out there making music. I think anybody who has hesitations, I think a lot of the barrier to entry to this kind of music making is the technical one, and people are afraid of buying something that's expensive that they may not understand. And so if you are in that boat, do yourself a favor and go to Discord or and find one of those communities and just start participating. And in no time, I think you'll really have a lot of those fears, satisfied or allayed or whatever. So,
well, and God help us all. I think I found about Earth Modular Society on their Instagram page at Saturday Night Synthesis. They followed a video we watched, and I clicked on them, and I was like, "Oh, this looks really cool." So there you go. Thanks, internets. You're connecting us through our shared interests and forming a community of like-minded individuals who love and support each other.
That's right.
Great. Thanks, internet, making our lives better. But yeah, that's it tonight for Saturday Night Synthesis. I'd like to thank our great audience. I'd like to thank Frederick Foxtrott for making all of that great music. Why don't you just click like and subscribe on the YouTube video if you're still watching this, especially if you're still watching this. Come on, you gotta do it. And next week, we're really excited. We're going to have another guest. Speaking of Earth Modular Society, we have another guest, Forrestine. I'm a really big fan of
really
her sound. So, and I'm just a really big fan of having these guests come on, too. It's a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I hope you guys come wherever and whenever you watch this in the future. Join us with it. Space and time is confusing. It's late. It's Saturday night. I got to go. All right. See ya. Thanks, guys.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live. I don't give a fuck.